everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the Impactco podcast. It is the first episode of 2023, and we're thrilled to have you here as part of our listener community. I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today. Before I welcome her, let me first introduce her to you. Her name is Michillay Brown. She's a business sustainability expert who works for a global multinational organization. She's part of the top 100 global inspiring women in mining and is a thought leader on international corporate and sustainability affairs. So we are thrilled to have Michillay here with us. Michillay, welcome to the Impactco podcast for episode 45. How are you doing? I think in your part of the world it's still morning, so how are you doing?
Thank you so much, Tuffa. First of all, I just want to say thank you for that introduction. That was really fantastic, and I'm honored to be part of your show as well. I know it's your 45th episode, and you've done really, really well, so I just want to say thank you for that. On my side of the world, it is 10:14 in the morning, and it is cold. It's 5 degrees. I mean, actually, that's been warmer than it's been in the last week. So I do miss the South African sun. I was in South Africa 2 weeks ago. So it's quite a contrast right now.
Yeah, look, it's about 35 degrees here. So.
Oh, man, I'm jealous.
It's quite hot. I wouldn't mind an hour and 5 degrees at the moment, but yeah. No, Michillay, thank you. It's great to have you on the show. And maybe just, to get into getting to know you a little bit better. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? In particular, where did you grow up? People hear that you're in the UK currently, but maybe they may not know where you grew up, as well as, what are your passions?
Great. Thank you, Tuffa. So I'm originally from Johannesburg. So that's a beautiful, busy and vibrant city in South Africa. That is honestly and truly where my heart lives. I spent most of my childhood and my adult life in Johannesburg with my family. So I'm really close with my mom and my sister. And before I left, I had a 1-year-old niece. I now have a 3-month-old nephew. So yeah, that was before deciding to do the big move to London almost 5 years ago. Prior to that, I had never lived anywhere else in the world. So this was indeed a big, scary, but extremely exciting move for me in my career, my life. In terms of my passions, and I have many, many different passions, but it's always been very rooted in sustainable development, both environmental and socioeconomic. I absolutely love being outdoors in nature. So anyone who knows me, any of my friends, my partner, my family members know I love to be amongst the trees, the birds, the ocean. That is really what nurtures me as a person. And that's where I am the happiest, right? So I start with being able to nurture myself, and then that gives me the ability to move into some of my other passions. One of them being I'm passionate about education. So bringing young girls and boys into STEM careers, being a mentor for those young boys and girls who are then growing up to be women and men in society. I'm a massive advocate for diversity and inclusion. So as somebody who has lived experience as being a minority in my career and throughout my career, I really am passionate about pushing diversity and inclusion and getting more and more people involved in those advocacy areas as well. One of the other things is I love media and public relations. So prior to being in the mining industry, I was a broadcast television presenter. I loved connecting and getting to know different people and their stories. And I still do that now in my personal life. I love to understand the journey. So Tuffa, what you're passionate about and what you're doing right now, I completely respect it. And I love what you're doing because I believe in encouraging people to use their voice as well in the way that I've learned how to use mine. So that's a really, really important aspect in terms of what I'm passionate about. And the list goes on, but I will stop there.
Yeah, it's quite an incredible list, right? And thank you for sharing that. I think, to be honest with you, it's quite a there's quite a lot of really important things that you're passionate about there. That I think are super impactful, and I can't wait to unpack, just a few of them in the episode. And I think everybody's probably wondering, when are we going to talk about this? When are we going to talk about this? But let's maybe get to know you a little bit more in terms of your journey. You studied Bachelor of Science in Geography, as I understand.
Correct.
Firstly, tell me what led to that choice.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not going to pretend like I've had a very perfect life. I think I remember being in high school and really not knowing towards grade 11 and matric what I wanted to do. I was extremely confused and really just thought, goodness, what direction do I go into? I loved geography in school. I absolutely loved it. But I didn't really understand what careers that could lead me to and what access that allowed me. So
Yeah,
I remember one day, my mom is a nursing sister and she interacts with different people on a daily basis. And there was somebody that came in from an environmental background in a mining company
yeah,
as one of her clients. And she knew about my confusion, and all my mom wants to do, like all our parents, is just really help and guide us. And she took a chance and spoke to this client that she was busy working on, and
yeah,
said, my daughter's really confused, and do you offer any sort of you know day in a life of somebody's career, or just allowing her to have that one day spent in the office and understanding what you do, because I think it would make it more tangible for her. And thankfully, he agreed. He didn't know us, but he agreed to this. And I remember spending one day in a mining organization, spending a lot of time with the environmental leads within the organization. And this really started to open up my world at 16, 17 years old, understanding what other people do in this field. And it just made it, again,
yeah,
a lot more tangible. And I would encourage others to do that. So I studied an undergraduate degree in Bachelor in Environmental Science, and then my postgraduate degree was a Bachelor of Science in Human Geography, and that was at Wits University in Johannesburg.
yeah.
So I proudly, came top in my class by the end of my year. My subjects
Amazing.
were centered around environmental and socioeconomic sustainability,
Yeah,
and at the time, organizations used it as a word, but didn't know how to put that into practice.
yeah,
So I really wanted to be a change agent in this area. I think, like I said to you before, Tuffa, I love nature, but I also understand that the only way that we're going to be able to protect that is the willingness to become a change agent in some way or another. So
yeah,
again, took up a career in this field and genuinely wanted to be part of tangible and practical change, but
yeah,
understanding that it's complex, right? We live on this earth, we extract from this earth, we're using metals and minerals that we need for our day-to-day lives. So there's a complex balance that we need to have between being a human being and progressing on this earth, but also understanding how we innovate in order to protect. So
yeah.
that's really what led me to where I am today.
And I love the phrase you use, the change agent, right? It's such a powerful phrase because it really speaks to, being, uncompromising in terms of, what is right, and really being willing to pursue that relentlessly. Without any break or any willingness to compromise on anything in that sense. I'm curious. We talked a little bit about your move overseas, right? Um, Obviously, I think that must have taken quite a lot of courage to be able to do that. I'm quite curious, if you can share with me the journey to that decision, one, and what lessons are you able to share from that actual move in and of itself?
Right. So that, yeah, I did reflect on that in the beginning, and I remember that move, tougher, like it was yesterday, right? It was both exciting but still very scary. I spent about 26 years of my life living in Johannesburg with my family, and
Yeah,
suddenly I saw an opportunity to expand my world, my perspective, learn about a new culture, seek new opportunities, and really just to open up that perspective in the way that I was thinking. And essentially, I was climbing out of my cocoon. So
Yeah.
I was very comfortable where I was, but I knew I had a deep seated desire to say yes to an adventure. And I'm
Yeah.
still that way inclined today. I'm quite an adventurous person, although many people don't know that. I worked really hard to get the opportunity. I interviewed with people in London, and I was super prepared, and which was great. I think there is certainly an element of there's always an element of being completely yourself when entering these situations with new people, but there's also the element of being very prepared for interviews, for engagements, just making sure that you want to get your points across. And thankfully,
Absolutely.
after a few conversations with people in London, I managed to somehow impress them, thankfully, and they said, "Great, we love you. Come over. We will relocate you here to start this new big scary journey." Now, it was really hard, tougher to leave my family behind
I
because I
can
am
imagine.
very close to them. But
Mm.
for me, it is something where I look back now and I'm so glad that I've made the decision. I've really grown as a person.
No, incredible. I mean, I can imagine even the weather is a big change to being
Oh,
used to wearing, your summer fashion to now 90% of the time winter
yeah.
fashion. I must admit, I think the fashion is one thing that appeals me about, moving up north.
Yeah.
It's way better than down here where, you in shorts and slops, but up there you have, trench coats and boots. It's quite,
Yeah, I mean, this is like fashion central London,
yeah,
really.
it is. I
It
guess that's why
is.
the fashion capital has come from up there. I think you're right in that it is a very courageous step, but one that brings about a lot of growth. And I think once, in life, we must be willing to take those steps that are daring, those steps that we don't know, if we're going to reach to the other side. But if we do, we will grow exponentially to a point where, you'll never recognize what you would have been like had you not taken that step. So I think it's a really powerful example that you have given, in terms of actually being willing to take that step. And I often in people's careers, we are faced with defining moments, right? We're faced with defining moments in our careers, moments which, if they go one way, your career goes this way. It may not necessarily be up or down. It could actually be left or right. It actually could be my path was defined by this. I'm curious what your defining moments are thus far. And if you could pick one, what would you say the defining moment has been in your career thus far?
Ooh, very difficult to pick one, tougher. That's a tough one. Um, Do you
Yeah.
know what I think I want to really build on the most obvious one, which we just spoke about, and that was the move to London, right? I always like to quote what one of my friends said to me, and we were peers at the same time, moving in different directions. He left South Africa to Canada, I left to London, and we regrouped maybe 6 months to a year later, and he said to me, "I can't unsee what I've seen." And that, such simple words, but meant so much to me in terms of that opening up your views and perspectives on life, on a different world, on a different culture.
Yep.
And if anybody gets the opportunity to do that, I think they should take that head on because, like you said, it really gives you that opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
For me, I learned to become resilient in that defining moment. So I remember I had very few friends in the first 2 years that I moved here. And I'm a very social person. I love to chat. I love to get to know people. But it was really hard to adapt when I got here. And,
Yeah.
I decided to spend time on myself. So I spent a lot of time going for coffees by myself. I would walk endlessly because you're able to do that in the city. I'd read in the park. I did a lot of things on my own, and over time, I began to build my network, right? But I think that time alone was really important. That was one of those defining moments where it was, I'm here in this big city. I don't know anyone. How can I take this on and actually embrace it, like completely embrace it. At the moment, the picture looks very different. I have a massive support system, fantastic personal and professional support system, but that took a lot of time. And I think quite a few people would have given up. All right. One of the things about any career or any lifestyle is feeling like you're part of a system, feeling a sense of belonging. And so, had those 2 years gone by and I felt defeated by that, I probably would have packed up and gone home, but I decided to be resilient. So, that was a really, really important and defining moment for me.
I think you touched on some really important points. Being able to spend time by yourself is really important. And not being afraid to explore. Like you said, going for coffees, going on walks, and you mentioned you're quite an adventurous person. And I think when you move to a new place, it's really important to do that. To be open-minded, to go and check out new things, to go find, how these things work and so on. I think it's really, really critical to be able to do that. And so I think what you've outlined there is quite important. We're going to talk about one of your passions, and you mentioned a number of passions, and people will be really keen to hear about them. And we're going to touch on one in particular, and if the listeners want to hear about the rest, I'll welcome you back onto the podcast and we can talk about the others.
I'll be happy to come back.
It'll be a lovely journey. Let's talk about sustainability, right? And sustainability in action in particular. And I know you're quite active and vocal, having been connected with you on some of the platforms. You're quite active and vocal about sustainability, and you have quite a big belief in terms of the need to drive sustainability in the different fields, the different industries, and the different sectors. I'm quite curious in terms of what new technologies or projects excite you at the moment when you talk around sustainability.
Brilliant, thank you, Tuffa. And what I love is the power of technology. It enabled us to connect, right? So that's really great for me, is the fact that we got to touch base. In terms of what excites me, so there is sort of my base foundation in sustainability, but I spoke to you about being a change agent, and what I meant by that is understanding what role you can play, and that then led me into technology, innovation, and being excited about fourth industrial revolution technologies. One of those top of mind that I can speak about now is hydrogen energy, right? So hydrogen energy and hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles is my current focus, and what I'm looking into. And it's quite a progressive area. I do love to find myself, and this is the adventurous side of me, I love to find myself in new challenging areas that people don't know a lot about, and that I get to champion and educate both myself and other people. And when it comes to hydrogen energy, one of the key things there is that climate change is one of the most defining areas of our time right now. And it's really, really exciting to play part of being, addressing the challenge, reducing our carbon footprint. One of the ways that we're looking to do that in the organization I work for is investing in the future of hydrogen energy. Hydrogen is one of the most abundant elements in the universe, and when combined with something called a fuel cell, it's a source of sustainable energy, right? So for me, I see hydrogen as the fuel of the future. And that's probably one example. An example that I also love, and this is coming from just my track record in sustainability and in technology, is blockchain, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. Now, that's also a few hot topics that are now being progressed, which I love to see. But in particular, I love to see that in relation to traceability and traceability of minerals and metals. So prior to my current role, I had a great opportunity to be in an organization leading on a traceability platform that looked at tracing diamonds from the mine all the way to the end consumer to ensure ethical and sustainable sourcing. Now, you can apply that to other minerals and metals as well. We're seeing a lot of traceability when it comes to plastics, all sorts of different materials. And this is what really excites me. It's things that are new, but also serve a passion and a purpose, Tuffa.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned two really, really exciting technologies. I think, if not if, but rather when, hydrogen really takes off, I think it will radicalize and change the way we operate in life, and as well as our everyday footprint in terms of what we do, both in industry as well as personally. And I
There
think
you go.
what a lot of people don't realize is that it's coming, right? And these
Yes.
technologies are going to form a part of what we do on a day-to-day life, and really, if we look at examples, there's so many examples. What we're doing right now is an example. 20
Hmm.
years ago, this never would have been possible, and people would have thought,
Yeah.
well, no, no ways, it can never happen. But actually, it's happening, right? We can
That's it.
connect halfway across the world and be able to do that. And so, technology is ever changing, and you're quite right. It's a big part of driving change, and making sure that we build a more sustainable world. If we talk to the young people, and you
Yeah.
and I are young people, right?
Yes.
We are still
We're still there. We're still
we're
there.
still young people, although the Gen Zs may disagree, but we're still young
Yeah,
people.
I'm holding on to that. I'm still part of the
I'm
youth.
still part of the youth as well. So let's talk about us as young people, right?
Yes.
Um, what role do we have to play, in building a sustainable future? And I want to contextualize this question by saying that, you know, and by saying, how do I practically get involved, in
Hmm.
within this? If I'm, for example, a student in university, or if I'm,
Hmm.
for example, working in a company, that has nothing to do with mining and metals, how do I get
Hmm.
involved in sustainability? And particularly when I'm young, when I feel like maybe I don't have as much influence, because I
Yep.
haven't been working, or I haven't started working, and
Hmm.
I'm just young and I don't know anything. I'm still busy learning. But how do I practically get involved as a young person?
Thank you, Tafa. I love that question because one of the things it allows me to share is that none of this came easy. I didn't suddenly just find myself in this career or in this organization. And
Yeah,
when I was still studying, I decided in order to get practical experience in environmental sustainability, I
yeah,
started to volunteer and I volunteered a lot, right? I think one of the things is we're so quick to think we need to hustle and make money and work immediately, and we discount the value of being a volunteer and being in a particular network.
yeah.
So when I was studying, I worked for the research organization Greenpeace. I literally knocked on their door and said, look, I'm not asking for anything. I just want exposure, just to understand what it is you do. And I'm not asking to be paid. If you're going to pay me, great. But that wasn't what I was after. And I spent time with them looking at the development of Africa in Greenpeace. I also worked for something called the Melville Koppies in Johannesburg. They're a big nature reserve in the center of Johannesburg. And again, I said to them, I remember meeting the couple that runs the nature reserve, and I said, look, I'm really looking to help you out. What do you need from me? And it was about 1920. I was out every Friday morning at 6 a.m. weeding the nature reserve, right? It sounds
Amazing.
like a very thankless and pointless task, but it's not, because I learned so much. I worked with the
Yeah,
other volunteers. I would listen to them. I would really try to build what it is that I wanted to do. I then
yeah,
also spent time as a sustainability educator at a center called Delta Environmental Center, also in Johannesburg. And there I spent time teaching young people about sustainability, because that meant I was also continuously learning. I needed to know what I'm teaching them about, right? So those
yeah,
are a few practical ways, as somebody who's a student, still trying to understand what they can and can't do. I dabbled in so many things at the same time. We have the time to do this. I think
yeah,
as somebody who is already in an organization, right? It's not too late to align yourself with a STEM career, and
yeah.
really going close to the strategy of the organization. Because right now, if the organization you're with is not involved in sustainability, then that organization is not sustainable itself, as in it's not
Exactly.
going to survive. Because that is top of the agenda right now. Then just a few other things, Tuffa, that I really wanted to share was getting involved in networking events and conferences with like-minded people.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, that's where I've met mentors. That's where I've been able to expand my conversations and understand what other people do.
Yeah.
I have quite a few mentors in the sustainability field, so I would encourage reaching out to myself or others that I know. I've not had a single role model that hasn't then led me to my next career move. So, there's a bigger picture. You go out there, you network, you find yourself the correct role model, and you also find yourself in the right career path. So
Yeah.
for me today, I have friends that are a range of conservationists, engineers, ecologists, environmentalists, who are
Amazing.
now dear friends in my network. And that was me putting myself out there. So I would say that's my big advice for the young people and the people in my generation.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, get involved, pull the weeds,
That's it.
really get your hands dirty and then put yourself out there. I love that. That's really, sound and really practical advice. And I think anybody listening to this, really has a clear direction on what to do and how to actually be a part of the change, and be a part of the solution as well going forward. Michelle, I'm going to ask you one question that I always ask at the end of the episode, which is, in a short nutshell, how do you make an impact in your world?
Oof, I love that. Do you know what, Tuffa? I think one of the big ways I make an impact is by using my voice.
Love that.
Too many times women have been taught to remain small and silent, and not step forward. And I think I've tried my best to role model using my voice for the greater good.
I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Michillay, I want to thank you so much for coming onto the Impactco podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show as part of our episode 45 on the journey of the Impactco to educate and inspire young people to make a difference in their world and to change the world for the better. So I want to thank you so much. I hope that you've enjoyed it.
I definitely have, Tuffa. I do hope that you invite me back. I loved speaking to you, and let's please stay connected.
Absolutely. No, we definitely will. And to you, the listener, thank you so much. And the watcher and the viewer, thank you so much for joining us on the Impactco podcast. We trust that you have been impacted, no doubt, by the wise words from Michillay, as well as the lessons that she shared, as well as the advice, really practical, actionable advice that you can start today. And I hope that you do start today, just like, as you should after listening to that. So thank you very much. And from Michillay and myself, we say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.